Welcome to the Lighthouse Financial Advisors Money Over 50 podcast with Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue. This information is general in nature and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation or needs. Therefore, you should consider whether the information is appropriate for you and your personal circumstances. If you require personal advice, please contact Lighthouse Financial Advisors. Here are your hosts, Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue.
Welcome to Money Over 50. Today, Michael, your topic, retirement planning is a series of sprints, not a marathon. What are you talking about, Lewis?
Thanks, Dallas. So going back to my professional rugby league days, a long time ago.
I'm glad you said long time ago.
Bad memories, actually. Strength and conditioning coaches, and like training in the North Queensland heat, preparing for the season. It's very, very hot. Humidity factor of about 99.99%. Temperature about 35 degrees. So, look, you went through a different series of conditioning, and for example, one session might be a 5 kilometre long run as you're prepared for as you're getting a base level of condition for the start of the season. And then they would shorten things up, and you might have another session, 25 sprints, 200 metre sprints. Or 50 100 metre sprints.
Or even
so there's three ways to run 5 kilometres. There's three ways to run. Let's say 2 ways to run 5 kilometres. There's a straight 5 kilometre run, which we it's not a marathon per se, but let's call that the marathon from the title here. Or there's the other way to do it, which is 25 200 metre sprints. And what I found myself doing is, if you had the 5 kilometre run, you were thinking about that the whole run.
You were thinking about 4.8 kilometres to go.
I've got 4.8 kilometres to go. I've got 4.6 kilometres to go. Whereas if you're doing the 25 200 metre sprints, all you thought about was getting through that next 200 metre sprint. You have a little bit of a rest. You're running a lot harder, of course, than you are in the 5 kilometre run. You'd get a rest, you go again, you'd get a rest, you go again, you get a rest, you go again. So it got me to thinking, people often think of retirement planning as more of a marathon. So they think, I have 10 years to go, or I have 15 years to go. Hey, they become a little bit anxious about where they need to be at that point in time. We hear a lot of things, what if one of us lose their jobs and all of those types of things. And so I guess they're talking and they're thinking about so many variables that are outside of their control. And we actually try to refocus people to just playing what's in front of them at that point in time. And every fortnight that you're both working, you have $1,000 spare, for example, and if you put that in your superannuation fund, you've done all you can for that. And if you do that again the next fortnight and the next fortnight, and then there's volatility there, which we've just seen where the markets fell 37% in a month. You're playing what's in front of you there, which is not to panic and to stick to your strategy at that point in time. So basically, it got me to thinking that people should just think of this more as a series of sprints than a marathon.
And I think you see that even with, like, in our first meeting with you can almost see the weight on people's shoulders, where you go, okay, well, based on the income that you said that you want to draw in retirement, and you've got 10 years to go, you probably need about $1.5 million, and you've got 500,000. You can see people going, it just seems completely insurmountable.
It does,
to go, and you go, you've got 500, you're probably on track for about $1 million, and you need 1.5. You can see people going, geez, I need to find $500,000. And then the whole point of what you're talking about, where retirement planning, the actual planning phase of that, is to go, don't think of it as, I need 500,000. You can break that down into what are the steps that, and you've spoken this many times, where even the concept of you've got 10 years to go, it's not you've got 10 years, it's if you get paid fortnightly, you've got 260 fortnightly paychecks. So you then want to break it down as to, okay, I've got 260 of these, what do I need to be doing every paycheck? What's the, in the analogy, it lines up pretty well with your analogy of what do I need to do for every rep here that I need to achieve? That's, I guess, our job is to go the bigger picture, the strategy of, well, if you make these changes, and where does that put you in 10 years' time, and all those kinds of things. What we really want to leave with, and this is a big part of it with all of our clients, new and ongoing clients, every time they leave a meeting, you want to make it very simple, like a post-it note. This is what I need you to do. Every fortnight, be paid this amount of money into this account, or make this repayment off your home loan, or whatever that is. We can't have it as, right, you're 58, you want to retire at 65. Here's what we need to do over the next 7 years. Because that doesn't tell you. It's number one, it doesn't tell you what action to take. Number two, it's too hard. It's too hard to stay motivated for
it is. It seems insurmountable, and there's just so many variables that can change over that period of time. Now, a lot of those variables are outside of people's control as well. And if you're treating this like a series of sprints, you just look ahead to the next, little bit of the next 200-meter run, which is the next fortnight, or the fortnight after it, or the fortnight after it. And you do that, and you repeat it, and you repeat it, and you repeat it until something happens. And things do happen that are outside of people's control that we can adapt to. Such as one of them losing a job, for example. So,
and that's I think so we meet with all, whether remotely, or we review things for all our clients every 6 months, and that's what we've found is that, I guess, if you take something like a 10-year retirement plan and you break it down into, here are all the fortnights remaining, and we're going to be looking at this every 6 months. So it's not a thing of, right, well, here's what I need you to do for the next 10 years, and if one of you loses your job, the whole plan's out the window.
No.
It's, here's where we roughly want to end up in 10 years' time. These are the steps you need to take now. We're going to be looking at this in 6 months. Or, so if something happens and you can't continue to do that, or you lose your job, or your health changes, whatever it is, I mean, we look at that as it actually popped up. But we're always looking at this, and you're always adapting it. And I think that's kind of where you're not treating it as this is the 5K run. It's right, what's the next sprint? What's this next 200-meter sprint? What's involved in that? So I think that's definitely easier from our point of view, because you're planning. Anytime someone says, I've got a 30-year plan, you have to have somewhere to shoot towards, but we know it doesn't work like that. It never happens like that. So your planning is really just to break that down to, what do we need to do over the next 6 months? And our job then is to break that down even further for our clients and say, every fortnight I need you to do this. These are the things that I need you to do. I think it's a great analogy there, and for a lot of people, whether even if you haven't looked at that at your retirement plan, if you're looking at it, and you would have heard the same things where you see people read the newspaper, and it's so easy to look and go, I've read this article where they say I need this much money, or I need this, and I don't have that. It's just all too hard. I'll do nothing.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so that's a good point to make, because the only time to start is now. People do often think that they do think there's all these things that I need to do, so I won't do anything right now. A good example of that are some clients that came on board with me 2 years ago. So we're 2 years into a 6-year plan for them to retire, and in that there was so many things that they needed to do in there. One of which was to downsize a really large house that they wasn't going to suit them longer term. They still had a bit of a mortgage on that, so when they downsized that, they were going to pay that mortgage off. Now they had to do a lot of things, like most people, to get it ready to sell. So we sort of just pushed that down the road a little bit. The wife has actually lost her job. So and they're working on the assumption that it might be hard for her to find a replacement job. So they're both on reasonably good incomes. So all we did then was just brought that forward. and said, okay, well,
the focus now?
why don't you then get this house ready to sell earlier rather than later? They can squash your debt.
That's a really good example of, like, you look at that as a 6-month timeline. That would have been something that in your mind you would have been thinking that'll be, years 2 and 3 or something like that. And now you go, okay, well, what we were going to focus on in the next 6 months has sort of been taken away from us. That's now the focus.
It's where we wanted us to get started with those guys was for both of them. And the starting point was actually to get both of them to get $25,000 into their super fund because they weren't salary sacrificing or putting any money into super before they came to see me. So, and that wasn't an annual thing.
Yeah.
Like we mentioned before, that's a fortnightly thing. Yeah. So we said, I basically come up with, I want you to pay this much into your superannuation, recurring for every single fortnight, and I want you to do the same. Yeah. What we've had to do as a consequence now is we've had to stop one of those going in because of cash flow reasons. Yeah. Where we've kept the still working party, the husband, we've kept his going in, and we've just looked to cut other expenses and actually get their house ready to sell. Now it's funny that the good work that they've done in the last 2 years by both, because they've essentially both been putting money in every single fortnight for the last 2 years. Yeah. So it's 52 fortnights each. It's 100. They've done 104 fortnights worth of good work if you count both of them. Yeah. That's got them in such a good position that even forward projecting over the next 4 years, over that overall 6-year plan, even just with the husband's money going in and the husband's employer contributions going in. They still are only $80,000 worse off than where they were going to be. And there's a bit of hope there that their property price, they think, is actually worth a little bit more, so they'll come away with a bit more change than that to put into their superannuation fund. So again, we could have back at the start we could have made it seem insurmountable by saying you need to do this, and this. I said, what can we do straight away? We can get money into superannuation every single fortnight, a la the sprint, not the marathon. And that's what we did, and they're in a good position. We're obviously adapting things right now, so it was completely outside of their control. That the job wasn't there anymore. So there are things that are inside their control now, but that particular, the company actually just went broke because of the economy at the moment. So there's nothing they could have done to actually.
But that ties into a previous podcast called "What to Do After You Make a Mistake," which is that whether it's in your control or out of your control, there are things that are going to change, and this is kind of that concept of, and we've talked about this before. When you're in the zone of exercising and keeping fit, everything just gets easier. And this is, I think, a similar thing where once you for these guys, they're in the habit of taking control of things. Because they've been saving that money for 2 years, they're actually in better positions to deal with this now than if they hadn't done it in the last 2 years. Their expenses would still be there. They would have sort of just drifted out. They'd now be having to make big lifestyle changes. Compared to, they've really got the base from those sprints that they've been doing. They've got themselves in a better position. They've got a better, I guess what you talk about, base level of fitness where they can now adapt to those things where they previously couldn't. So it would have been very easy to look at that and go, I've got to do all these things and it's a 6-year thing, so I just won't do anything until these other things happen. Where really what we're talking about here is these are all the things that need to happen over the next 10 years, but always trying to break that down to what's the next burst of activity.
So there's stuff that you can do straight away. That's the first sprint. And you can repeat that, which sprints are all about repeating. So you put that in bed, you bed that down to start with, and then you worry about the other things later on, as opposed to thinking I've got this huge big marathon to run and
it's funny because I think that's a part of where our role as a financial planner is still there. So I had this with clients. I had a meeting with just the other day where before they came in, I did about 4 hours worth of calculations of, this is kind of where they are, this is where they need to be. There's all these different ways that we could try and make it happen, and comparing that versus that, and which one is going to be best for them long term, and emotionally best, financially best, all these things. And you then get to the other side of it, which is just, here's what I need to do. B pay this into here, B pay this into here. And that's kind of where it becomes their role, is almost like the personal trainer to say, just get through this next person, and that's all I need from you. It reminds me of one of my guys that coached me in MMA, where you'd have a fight, and after the fight he'd watch the tape and he'd have a post-it note, and there'd only ever be 3 things. That was his big thing, is there's only ever 3 things that the human mind can focus on at any one time. If I say, here's 20 things that you could improve from that, you're not going to improve.
You're not going to do that. Yeah, you're not going to improve anything.
I've tried to take that across with my clients. It's always trying to make it as simple as possible, and less than 3 things of, here's the next burst of activity, here's the next sprint that I need from you. Just go and do that, and that's it. And don't worry about, well, once I've done this, then what's the next step? It's just get that done.
Yes,
first.
that's right. Yeah, just bed that down, get that happening, and then worry about anything else you can tweak in the future.
Yeah. Good spot to wrap up. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Money Over 50 podcast with Lighthouse Financial Advisors. We look forward to catching up again soon.